The Word speaks present today. The shocking truth about Jesus' disciples in their last days. It was a silent night in Jerusalem. The city slept, but a group of men awakened to a mission that would change the world. There were 12 of them. Simple, unlikely, almost invisible in the eyes of the Roman Empire. But each of them carried in their eyes a flame lit by something they couldn't fully explain. Little did they know that after those 3 years walking alongside a man named Jesus, their names would echo through the centuries, but at a cost no one dared to imagine. In time each one went their own way. There were no stages, no spotlights. Only faith. Faith and blood. Because what began with healing and words of hope would end with spears, swords, crosses, and muffled cries in dark prisons. One by one the apostles were erased from the earth, but ignited in eternity. Not as ordinary martyrs, but as foundational stones of something that still beats in the hearts of millions today, the Christian faith. And this is where one of the most powerful, and most hidden, stories of the New Testament begins. You know the miracles, the parables, the Jesus who walked on water. But perhaps you've never heard this part of the story. The part that doesn't fit into religion textbooks or Sunday sermons that avoid the harshest truths. The part that reveals that, in order for faith to reach you, someone had to pay an unimaginable price. Get ready. Because what you're about to discover about the end of the 12 apostles will forever change the way you look at every cross hanging on the wall. Few realize this, but when Jesus chose 12 apostles, he wasn't just gathering disciples. He was spiritually reconfiguring the very concept of God's people. Yes, the 12 were no random number. They were a direct representation of the 12 tribes of Israel, which for centuries symbolized the old covenant with God. By forming a new group with the same number, Jesus was making it clear that a new covenant was being established. This wasn't a symbolic detail. It was a deep theological move, as if he were saying, what began with Moses will now be fulfilled in me. Powerful, right? These 12 men, though fragile and flawed, became the pillars of a new spiritual reality. And here's something many overlook. God never sought perfection to begin something great. He sought availability. Peter denied him, Thomas doubted, John wanted to call down fire from heaven. Yet they were chosen. This shatters the idea that you must be perfect to be used by God. He transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary when there's true surrender. It's as if each apostle carried a tribe within, and together, they restored the divine plan with renewed breath. Incredible, isn't it? And more, Jesus didn't send them only to preach among the Jews. No, he sent them to the whole world. That shows that the calling was, right from the start, universal. There was no land too sacred or people too pagan. The message was for all. They were like seeds, thrown into hostile yet fertile soil. Each was planted in a different region with a specific purpose. But this mission would not come without cost. A very high cost. And that's when things begin to get heavy. While the ancient world saw death as failure, the apostles viewed martyrdom as spiritual promotion. Does that sound contradictory? That's where one of the most revolutionary ideas of Christianity enters. The theology of the cross. Jesus had already warned, whoever wants to follow me must take up their cross. And the apostles took that literally, not as a metaphor but as a literal destiny. They didn't just preach the crucified Jesus. They relived the cross in their own bodies. It's as if their blood became the ink with which God would write the next chapters of salvation history. Here's a truth few talk about. The apostles' martyrdom wasn't simply the result of political or religious persecution. It was a radical response of love. Yes, love. They died because they were deeply convinced that the message they carried was worth more than their own lives. Picture it, Peter being crucified upside down because he didn't feel worthy to die like Jesus. Thomas pierced by spears in India. Bartholomew flayed alive in Armenia. And none of this made them turn back. On the contrary, it made the message stronger. More alive. More immortal. And do you know the side effect of all this? Faith began to spread like wildfire. The more emperors tried to kill the leaders, the more every execution became a free commercial for the truth they preached. Tertullian, one of the early church thinkers, hit the nail on the head when he said, "The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church." They didn't just die for the faith, they planted it with their deaths. And now, with blood spilled across the map, it became clear. The plan was never meant to remain centralized. How did these men, without internet, airplanes, or social media, manage to spread a message that would transform the entire world? Each apostle went in a different direction, like chess pieces moved on a cosmic board. Thomas went to India. Bartholomew to Armenia. Peter and Paul, the core leadership, ended up in Rome. It's as if the Spirit was guiding a global expansion plan before globalization even existed. And all of it without money, without institutional support, just courage and faith. Jesus had said, "You will be my witnesses to the ends of the earth." And they obeyed. Where they died, churches were born. Where they were persecuted, disciples grew. The Christian faith was seeded in blood but watered with hope. They didn't plant temples of stone. They planted ideals, values, eternal truths. The message of Christ didn't stay locked in Jerusalem. It spread across the world because these men were willing to pay the price. And that spiritual map still pulses today. And it's precisely that uncommon courage that brings us to an even deeper point, the direct parallel between the life of Jesus and the death of his apostles. It wasn't just a mission. It was a mirror, a reflection, a cross. The apostles didn't just speak of Christ, they lived him. Literally. What happened to Jesus, betrayal, judgment, torture, death, was repeated with dark variations in each of them. Peter crucified upside down. John thrown into boiling oil. James beheaded. Thomas pierced by spears. Bartholomew flayed alive. They didn't die like ordinary martyrs. They died as reflections of the passion. They were imitators of Christ to the last consequence. Jesus did not die alone. His cross echoed. And the apostles became the embodied continuation of the divine mission. They were living miniatures of the cross spread throughout the world. It's as if Christ's suffering unfolded into 12 distinct acts, each one confirming that faith is not for the weak of spirit, but for the courageous of soul. And this sheds light on the next point, the specific end of each one. Because each story holds not only a name but a lesson, a geography, a message, and the map of their suffering teaches more than 1,000 sermons. Peter crucified upside down. Thomas killed by spears in India. Bartholomew flayed alive in Armenia. James the Greater beheaded. James the Lesser stoned and struck with a club. Andrew crucified on an X-shaped cross. Philip tortured and hanged. Simon the Zealot sawn in half. Jude Thaddeus killed with an axe. Matthias, Judas Iscariot's replacement, beheaded. John, the only one to die of natural causes, but not without suffering exile and persecution. And of course Judas Iscariot, who died by suicide. These aren't just shocking accounts, they are historical proofs of the power of conviction. Each death has a place, a context, a spiritual geography. James' tomb became a pilgrimage route. St. Peter's Basilica in Rome stands over his martyrdom. Faith left visible marks, real traces in the world. Each apostle was like a spiritual comet that crossed time. But none of these deaths were in vain. Each one had a purpose. And when we look closely, what we see behind these tragedies is not senseless pain. It's living theology. It's a renewed covenant. And that leads us to the heart of it all. The apostles' martyrdom wasn't an accident. It was a signature. They didn't die only out of faithfulness, but as part of a cosmic plan. The cross of Christ inaugurated the new covenant, and the apostles sealed it with their own blood. It's as if Jesus wrote the new story with his sacrifice, and the apostles stamped eternity's seal with their lives. Every drop of their blood reaffirmed what Jesus declared, that this faith is for those willing to give everything. They were reflections of the cross, not just preachers of it. And this forms a powerful theology. The gospel is not a speech. It's a surrender. The cross is not a symbol of defeat, it's a calling that still lives. Because if they gave everything, what excuse do we have to give so little? And now that you've seen all this, it's impossible not to ask, how should this story impact the way you live your faith? Have you ever stopped to think that maybe the cross you carry today was paved with the blood of men who didn't even know your name, but knew exactly what they were doing? The apostles didn't die for a pretty idea. They died for a truth so powerful that no sword could silence it. And now that truth has reached you. The question is, what will you do with it? Has your faith been just a Sunday tradition, or a real calling to transform your life? You don't have to die on a cross, but you do have to live with the same surrender. Maybe that means changing your priorities, stopping the hiding, starting something new that scares you. Maybe it means facing your mission instead of running from it. Because if 12 men could set the world on fire with courage, what's stopping you from igniting your part of the flame? If this message stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell, and come with me on this journey. Here we don't run from hard topics, we face them. And there's so much more for us to uncover, together.